everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our information session on the Math Empowerment through Standards-Based Grading program. What we're going to do today is do just a little welcome and introduction. I'm joined today by Dr. Stephen Kramer, who's then going to give you an overview of standards-based grading. We'll then review how the study works and then open it up to any additional questions so that we can answer them for you. Just a quick note on norms. If you can mute when you're not speaking, that would help us out a lot. Throughout the session, please feel free to raise your Zoom hand or put questions in the chat. We can stop and answer questions as we go, and then we'll also have a dedicated time at the end. But if a question comes up, ask it right away. Folks are coming in, while we're all coming in from New York, folks are coming in with different perspectives. So, we'll keep it at that. Keep comments concise if you have them, just so we can keep cooking. And obviously technology happens. So if we glitch or something happens, please just bear with us. Okay, so actually before I do that, I'm going to tell you quickly about who I am. So my name's Dr. Megan Benet, and I work at an organization called Fullscale. And we are so pleased to be partnered with 21P STEM, who is running this incredible study. I live in New York. I live in when I lived in New York City, what I understood to be upstate New York. And then once I actually moved here, I realized that I learned that, in fact, not everything above Manhattan is upstate New York, and that I do not live in upstate New York. I live just across the Westchester border in Putnam Valley. I think we are joined by actual upstate people today. So that's where I live. I said to Stephen and his partner, John, that I am unabashedly recruiting in New York because I live here, and this is where I want all of our schools to have access to this really remarkable program. So I am biased, and that is why we are having a New York information session. I want all of you in on this. All right. So just to give you a quick overview of our big goal, and note that this is kitschy 90s animation, and I hope it brings some joy to your Friday morning with what I think is the only way to animate slides. So we know that standards-based grading works. You're going to hear from Stephen. Their studies have shown it. Other studies have shown it. Standards-based grading works. So then why isn't it happening everywhere? Well, there are barriers. There's lots of barriers out there, but the two that we're focused on here are access to professional development and ongoing support, and access to resources. And so our goal here is to say, if we remove the barriers, we provide professional development and support, and we remove that barrier, and we provide resources, we remove that barrier, and they go away, then standards-based grading can be implemented in schools well, students learn, and the model scales. So that's what we're testing here today. Thank you, thank you. Yes, I am an animation queen. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Stephen Kramer.
Okay, Megan, I heard some dings. I think you're letting everybody in as they join. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm Stephen Kramer. You'll see two pictures here. The other picture is John Baker, who just could not be here today. He's the assistant project director, and the reason why you should know about him is he's the one who sends out the MOU and contacts directly with districts and organizes all the logistics of joining. So you'll be dealing a lot with him later. I'm Steve Kramer. A little background: I have been a teacher from pre-kindergarten, preschool, all the way up through high school. Never was a college teacher. I've taught math. I've also taught general. I've been a fourth grade teacher as well. After I got my doctorate, I joined the company. At that time, precursor to 21P STEM, 21st Century Partnership for STEM Education, was a math science partnership of Greater Philadelphia. And we were working on a lot of things on reform math and reform science with a lot of universities, a lot of districts. And we worked with Dylan William, who is one of the real guiding lights in implementing formative assessment. And of all the things that we did with Dylan, the standards-based grading, or what at that time we called proficiency-based assessment and reassessment, was the thing that seemed to have the most strong positive impact. And so while the company did a controlled trial to really test our belief that this was working, I took a year and a half leave of absence and went back, taught 8th grade math, and tried out all the things we were doing. And my own experience was, yes, the standards-based grading and reassessment was what really made a difference for my students. So when I came back and we had positive results, I wanted to move forward with bringing this on. So that's why I'm involved in this. And we'll spend about a minute now to let you folks put questions you have in the chat. And I'll address some as we go along and some at the end.
And I should mention, I'm a former teacher, so I'll add some wait time here. Great, Jessica. You will certainly learn more about it. Just kidding. I'm allergic to silence. Let's keep going, and we will and we'll address them as we go. Take it away, Stephen.
Okay, you can add them on. And I'll talk about the commitments later. That's great. I'm actually going to take a second to read these before I go on. Okay. So imagine this girl's a 6th grader, and she brings home to her parents a report card that says, "Hey, I got an A- in math or a C in math." Or she brings home a midterm that I got a 72%. What does that really tell you? What does that tell her parents or her? If instead she says, okay, I'm proficient in dividing fractions, I'm highly proficient in dealing with unit rates, but I'm not yet proficient on working with expressions. And here's something I can work on with expressions. And when I'm done, I can be reassessed for full credit to show that I've learned it. That's when we did that in algebra classes, mostly, also in some geometry classes, we found that kids learned a year and a half of math in 1 year of school on average. And we were very excited about the success. But we also found after we stopped our study and our direct support that schools and teachers stopped doing this. And this is because they were getting burned out by what it required to keep it up. They were having to staying up nights and weekends, making work problem sets, making reassessments, making videos of reteaching, small group work that they could do if they met with kids. And we realized that what we needed to do was create the materials and supports to remove the barriers and make it possible with no additional over and above what it normally takes, which is a lot to teach, to make it impossible to implement this. And that's what the current project is. We were funded by the Department of Education to do 2 things: create the supports that remove the barriers to implementation, and then test to see if the whole project works with these new supports. So the proven gains, we did a very rigorous cluster randomized controlled trial, which is really the gold standard of research. We found that students were learning more with clear goals, that the opportunities for relearning and reassessment were used. And as I said, we called it the PARLO project, proficiency-based assessment and reassessment of learning outcomes. We use the word learning outcomes because they didn't yet have state standards when we started. And they had 1.5 years of learning in a single school year on average. And qualitative, we didn't measure this about growth mindset, but the qualitative report from teachers is we really support. One of the things that was going on was that growth mindset. If I don't get it at first, I can come back and I can learn this. If I keep working, I can grow as a mathematician. Let's move on. Okay, the main thing here is comparing what traditional grading does, which is averaging your scores over a whole semester or marking period to get a final with maybe this homework turned in, you got a 0 early on, maybe we'll count that as a 50% because we don't know what to do with that. And here's your average versus standards-based grading, which says, no, what we're going to worry about is what do you know at the time that the report goes forward? Have you mastered this? Are you highly proficient in it? Then you get full credit for it. Doesn't matter if you're slow at first, if you keep working at it and get it, that's what you get credit for. And that's the main difference. And that's a lot of folks have focused on the equity behind that, and that's important. Even more, we found that helps all students, and even more importantly, it helps everybody to learn more. Let's move on. So this, I'm going to ask you to take a minute to read this. This is one of the teachers from our earlier project. This was her testimonial, and we're actually having her help with some of the PLCs and some of the design work now. This is one of the algebra teachers who we worked with. And just take a second to read. I'll read it too while you do. And just to follow up on what Jessica said about how the kids are learning to see they're not just bad at math, they can learn and work at it. We're in a pilot year, and comments I've gotten from several of the pilot teachers is, we're overcoming the learned helplessness they come with at the beginning of sixth grade or the beginning of, actually, it was our sixth grade teacher who made that comment. That they come in at sixth grade and they have this learned helplessness, that this helps them to overcome that. Let's move on. So to be successful at standards-based grading, the teachers were creating not just assessments, but reassessments. They were creating study materials. They were creating routines in their classrooms to ensure that you don't just reassess because you're hoping you'll get lucky. You, in fact, study, learn more, know more, and then reassess and how to set that up. And all of that was a lot of work. And we're going to provide this project. Our goal is to provide assessment resources so that if you need more, you could use your own. But if you need more to reassess, we have that. Learning materials so that kids can work in pairs, work individually, work with a teacher to relearn stuff they had trouble with in a different way. Classroom routines to enable all this to happen and to communicate to students what they're doing and to let them really take charge of their learning. And so we're providing that rather than having you all develop that, which is the big barrier to implementation. So let's move on. So basically, we're providing professional learning for teachers, and I'll go over later what that is, but it's both summertime professional learning and professional learning communities that are virtual. The summer is in person. The PLCs will be throughout the year. And we have a resource library that has reassessment materials you can use. It has student-facing relearning materials that they can access themselves through an app we have, as well as tools you can use to organize your classroom, communicate with parents, and so on. So here's what you get. During the first summer before implementation, we do 3 6-hour days of in-person professional development. We'll choose the sites based on where people are when they sign up, so it's geographically convenient. We'll offer them in more than one location. And then the second year, there's a 1-day refresher before the second year of implementation. And then we have monthly 90-minute online professional learning communities, splitting into groups 6 to 8 with a facilitator helping to do that. The principal During the first year, you'll have 1 day of professional development to learn what's going on so they know what to look at for in your classroom, how to support you, how to communicate to parents. We have non-academic support materials. That's things like, well, here's a a reassessment contract that worked really well. Here's a letter we use for parents as samples that you can adapt. We have academic content library aligned to the we start with the Common Core standards and adapt them so the library reflects the New York standards, which is very, very similar. And we have an app that presents kids' proficiency. You use it to communicate kids' proficiency by standard, and they can access the materials they need if they're not proficient in something to work on that, if they want to move to high performance to work on that. For what the teachers are expected to do is attend the professional development in the summer. They're expected to attend. We'll have 9, and our evaluator says if you attend at least 6 of the 9, we'll count that as a high quality implementation. So that's what we expect of you. Most people in our past have found that they want to go to all of the PLCs. So let's move on, please. A participating school can do 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They can do just 1 or 2 grade levels of those 3. But if a grade level participates, we want all the general education math teachers in that grade level to participate. We don't want kids to say, oh, this is only for the advanced algebra kids in 8th grade, the other kids don't get it. Or this is only for the non-advanced kids, the other kids don't get it. It's the whole 8th grade. Our materials support 6th grade math as to the New York standards, 7th grade math, 8th grade math, and algebra 1. Those are the materials we have. We at the end will do an analysis like we did before to ensure that this works. And so we're going to de-identified outcome data. There'll be a data sharing agreement. What the teachers do is we find a way. Our goal is to help them communicate proficiency by standard and support reassessment for full credit after further study, and provide opportunities for kids to become highly proficient. And that's what we expect of teachers participating in the study. Now, I don't know if the later slide says this, so I'll skip when it does, but it's important to know that you do not need to change your report card. Some schools already have a report card that lists either all the standards in math or key standards and has proficiency on that. You can put it right on. Other schools will have A, B, C, D, and depending on the report card will work. Each school will have you'll develop a simple translation. If you get everything's proficient, that count as an A. If one thing is not yet proficient, but 4 are high proficient, you can still get an A. Whatever the rules are, we'll communicate. We will. The important thing is to have a clear method of how the proficiency ratings go to translate to report card grade, so the kids know what's going on and feel like they have control of what's going to be on that report card. If it's a percent on the report card, we can handle that and we will work out a translation method with your school. So, randomization. We are required by the Department of Education to fund all this work to test that this continues working just as well. And so what we're going to do is 2 cohorts, an immediate implementation cohort and a delayed implementation cohort. Our theory is that if you get randomly assigned to cohort A during those first 2 years, your kids' scores will go up immediately, and cohort B won't see much change. And then when cohort B starts, their scores will go up. And at the end, everybody will have been helped. And we also have the capacity to only really help about half the funding capacity to do it in 2 cohorts. And so because of capacity and research, you're going to have 2 years of direct support. Some will start this coming school year, and some will wait 2 years and start in the 28, 29, and then 29, 30 school year. This is our timeline. This current year is the pilot year. We're doing 2 things. We are working with 7 teachers in across 4 schools in 2 different states to try out all our procedures, all our materials, refine our professional development, refine the library, make sure it's working, make sure the software works, and get everything solid. That's going on right now. At the same time, we're doing meetings like this to recruit 80 schools to participate, and we'll split those between cohort A and cohort B. It says there's a March 2026 randomization. That means that if you sign up by the end of February, in March, you will know which cohort you're in. June 2026 is the deadline, but when we want to have all 80 schools randomized, but schools who happen to join after the end of February and miss that first randomization will have a rolling assignment. So if we get 2 schools, we'll assign one to cohort A and the other to cohort B as schools join up later. Cohort A starts, it says August. Really, it's probably going to be late July or early August, depending on what works best for the participating schools. We'll have the 3 days of professional development for teachers, the 1 day for administrators. And then we'll have the monthly PLC support. And the next year we'll have a summer refresher. And then we'll have, again, the monthly PLC support. And then those cohort A schools will go into the sustainability, keep them going strong. And we'll begin working with cohort B schools and give them the same support over those next 2 years. What stays free forever? After you're done, all our curriculum resources, all our assessment materials, all our implementation guidelines, all our digital tools to work with the teachers and the students stay available. A student dashboard, communication materials for families stay available. We're also going to create, as we move into the second year, we'll create materials for internal capacity to train a toolkit so that you can onboard new teachers yourselves. Refresher PD packets that when our funding goes away and we close up the study, you can keep running your own 30 to 60-minute sessions. A playbook for mentors to help new people come on. Obviously, when we close up shop or even move on to the other cohort, we're not going to provide the direct professional development that you'll have the materials to do that. We won't be paying for people to attend professional development. So that's what stops once our direct support ends. And there probably were a lot of questions. So one question I saw earlier, and I'll look at those others in a minute, but I want to address is schools that are already doing standards-based grading versus schools that are doing no standards-based grading. Our pilot schools are of both types. Our experience has been that the issue of giving the kids feedback by standard, giving them the ability to study more and then reassess for full credit is very seldom implemented because it takes support resources that just districts don't have without our help. And so we're working in Portland, which has standards-based grading district-wide, already implemented in the English language arts and math, but they don't have our support to make that reassessment piece feasible. And that's a key piece that we think is necessary to really get the full year and a half of growth in 1 year. Our Pennsylvania schools where we're piloting have never done standards-based grading, and they're implementing it in the classroom. They're giving kids feedback by standard, giving kids the opportunity to reassess and grade by standard, and then they're just translating into a regular report card grade. So organizing their instruction, their feedback by standard is something we're helping them to do. So we can handle both of those situations. And our belief is that in either situation, the math empowerment through standards-based grading will be helpful. If you're already doing standards-based grading and you already have all the materials, you've developed them to do the reassessment and the reteaching, and you've just got it all licked, we've never met somebody like that, but if we did, we wouldn't help them we might not be as much help to them.
Said another way, Stephen, it will be a diverse group of folks who are in the study, and all of the learning will be differentiated. I like to think about it as a continuum. So You could be on the never ever. If you are all the way on the side of like, we could give professional development on this, probably not for you. Everybody else, welcome. And I will say my opinion is that if you are in the place where you are in constant fire mode and things are generally not going well, maybe not the thing to focus on right this moment.
You're
Otherwise,
talking about not service-based grading, but your school is like, oh my
literally
God,
fire.
fire in the schools. We can't do anything. Oh my God. Obviously we're going to help. We'll work with you to do new things. There are a bunch of questions, I'm sure, already. I haven't had a chance to read them
Stephen,
all.
I can help you summarize some of them.
Mhm.
One is will you be covering helping schools to differentiate between level threes and level fours? I said
You're
yes,
talking,
this is what you would be doing during the PDs and PLCs.
okay, level three, proficiency or level, is that what you mean? The proficiency level three and level four? Is that
Bart, do
because
you
there's
want to
level
ask
three
your
and level four support. There's the level three and level four in what context? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me clarify. Just we have a 4-point scale here in Ithaca, and so the question is like the standards and things that meet that, the bucket of work that leads to
Got
that grade
it.
is in question by our teams. There's some
Yes, that's difficult.
discrepancy. Yeah.
So what we do is in general, proficient means that you can apply the materials. That's what we in a if you're familiar with Webb's depth of knowledge, which we find a little easier to use the Bloom's taxonomy, so that you can translate them. We would say that it's the um, application depth of knowledge two is what we think of proficient is. Rote knowledge, I can perform this, but I don't understand it, does not count as proficient. Then highly proficient would be that strategic thinking level. We tend to do two ways. We've determined there are two ways to show strategic thinking. One is to um, solve problems that are multi-step, involve thinking deeply about what's really going on here and explaining what you're doing so somebody else will understand it. That's one kind of problem that you can do to show strategic thinking. The other thing you can do is take a student who's not yet proficient, can't yet do a classmate who can't yet do those applications and help them become proficient and tutor them so that you're good enough to teach it. And that's another form of strategic thinking. And those are the two ways kids move from proficient to high performance. And that's our definition that we're encouraging teachers to use. And that also encourages peer support and a growth mindset as well. Um, so um, the difference between level some schools have three levels: not yet proficient, proficient, high performance. Other schools have four levels: close to proficient, not yet proficient, close to proficient, proficient, and high performance. We support teacher schools going either of those two ways, but our main focus is on the difference between being just proficient and being high performance. Honestly, in some ways, that high performance, the way we've defined it, and the proficient way we've defined it, it takes a lot to be proficient in all the middle school standards in sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade. And we're fine if a school says, that's an A if you're proficient in everything. And what high proficiency does is it's bragging rights or it's an A plus. And that's almost a good way to think about it.
So,
Did I
Stephen,
answer your question?
another way, so this depth of knowledge that Stephen has just demonstrated is an example of the expertise that you're going to get as part of this. The short answer is yes. Part of what will be in the study, part of the PLC and the PDs will be going through questions like this, same as how do we address caregivers who aren't in support of this, or how are we going to change my hearts and minds. As our community is really traditional. We have, generations of people who have gone there and they said, I always got A's and it worked for me. Why do we have to switch to this? So, like, handling that kind of community change is also going to be part of what you'll be doing in this study. Um, we had one question. Can an administrator participate can a different administrator participate in the principal PD session, Steve? So if the principal can't go, could it be like an assistant principal?
Yes, if it makes sense in your context. What I mean by that is if the principal is the one who's going to be going to classrooms, supporting the teachers, talking to parents, we probably want them to attend. But if the assistant principal is that person, it makes sense for them to attend. Um, and what you can do, we're flexible on that kind of thing. The other thing to know is there's a funding constraint that we can probably only fund to pay one principal per one administrator per school. If more than one want to attend, we cannot pay you, but you can attend. If, we can't pay you for your time. We can only pay one administrator per school, just because otherwise we'll run out of money. But you're welcome to attend and learn.
Lauren, the PD, so there's the professional development in the summer is in person, and it's going to be 3 days for teachers, 1 day for principal. And it'll be geographically located in a place that isn't going to be horrifyingly inconvenient. So they're not all going to be in New York City, and Rochester has to drive to New York City. But this is, if you have others in your area who are like, oh, they aren't here today, but we think that they should do this, tell them, because the bigger the clusters we can get in areas, the closer we can get to, to doing a professional development right where you are. The PLCs will be virtual. Those are monthly and those will be virtual. They'll also be after school because we know that finding substitutes for during the day would be a living nightmare. So it is asking your teachers that are participating to give some of their time, but in return, they are getting paid. We wouldn't ask them to do something that isn't compensated.
One
Um,
comment on the PLCs is
yeah.
that we're flexible. We had one district say, we want them to be during the school day. Can't we please do that? Well, we're flexible. We plan them to be after school because that'll be easier for almost all of you. But that's flexible to schedule because we'll be scheduling small groups of 6 to 8 teachers, and the time will depend on what works. That's all.
Stephen, we have a question about how we're going to support districts that support a large number of English learners and students with disabilities.
Those are two different questions. English learners, honestly, we're trying to get funding to translate all our materials into Spanish. We're not funded to do that yet, which means that some of the materials you're going to have to use, the automatic translator and things that you have. It's not going to be perfect. We're hoping by the end of the project to have everything translated, but I can't promise that. And then you ask students with disabilities. What we're doing is, from the experiment point of view, we're using the New York State test as the dependent variable. So the participating in the formal cohort A, cohort B is the kids who are taking the regular state test, not the modified state test. We have materials to support relearning and reassessment for anybody studying the on-grade standards. If they're studying, a fifth, or studying, if the seventh grader studying sixth grade standards, we have the materials to do that. And you can use them to teach to the standards, and it will certainly be helpful and useful to all the students. We don't have materials with fifth grade teaching or lower than that. So if there's a sixth grader who's actually studying the fifth grade standards, we won't have support materials to help them. The professional development methodology will work, but some of the barriers of, hey, stuff that I would need to create, we won't have created for you.
I also think, Anthony, there's in the library, there's any number, there's a whole bunch of relearning materials for each standard that the teachers have agency, right? And I think something we haven't said out loud yet is that you do not have to use the materials. Remember my cute little 90s uh, animation in the beginning? We
Right.
know it's a barrier, but if that's actually not a barrier for you, you don't have to use them. We are not studying the efficacy of the materials. We're studying if we offer you, if we offer to remove this barrier, does standards-based grading stick and work? Um, so if you, so there, and there's obviously teacher agency. So they're allowed to modify these materials. They're allowed to say, okay, I think this is going to work for these students, but I want to bring in the L teacher and ask how we can, how can we create more entry points for multilingual learners? Or I have a co-teacher and I know it's a bummer because I'm the teacher of record. So I'm the one who's going, but I want to share this obviously with my co-teacher. And the co-teacher wants to look at it and say, okay, I like these ones because they are videos, but for our kiddos who have difficulty with auditory processing, I think that this is going to be challenging, and we're going to need to come up with some other alternatives. Those other alternatives aren't necessarily part of the library, but they can create, like we can't do everything. Like they can modify as they wish, though.
Also, throughout the project, we're going to have our library team working and improving and adding things. So if you say, hey, I have created this fantastic material that is helping my kids, that's better, that does something, fills a gap that you guys don't even know you have, and you give it to us and give us permission to, we'll steal it, quite gladly if you want, or modify and improve it. We have Desmos activities that are the ones that we like best are the direct feedback ones where you put in an answer of 2 times 1/4 cup and it does an animation. So, that didn't fill out the right amount. You do another animation or you try another thing until you see that it does work. Those kind of things are very helpful to different kinds of learners. So we also have those kind of materials that we're creating.
Um, does that answer your question, Anthony? Okay, cool. Melissa wants to know, so Melissa is a math coach for teachers in 5th through 12th grade. Can she be the one, and Melissa, are you saying that could you be the one who attends the principal training for your district, for the school?
I was just asking in general, since I'm not sure. I mean, I did send all this informational out to the math teachers 5 through 12, and I don't know necessarily if we would have the right cohort on board at this point. So I didn't know if I could still apply and attend and try, to get the ball rolling.
So actually the next step after this, which we can share, is that if you are interested and this seems like something you might want to pursue, the next step is that you actually get to have a meeting with me. And so Melissa, in that case, I would say you and I should talk. It is important that you're going to need at least one grade level to be bought in. And so if you're a school that only has one teacher per grade level and your 8th grade teacher is hot stuff and is like wants to do this, great. Like you can just do the 8th grade teacher. That's one per grade. If you have 3 teachers per grade and the other 2 8th grade teachers are more hesitant, you are going to have to do some convincing or deciding, is this going to work if we have 2 teachers who are not willing to change their practice? So again, it doesn't have to be the whole middle school. And I don't think we said out loud either, Stephen. It could actually also be algebra or geometry as well.
Not geometry.
Not
geometry.
Just kidding, just algebra.
We don't have the material. We don't have the development materials to create the geometry support.
Great, just kidding, not geometry, but does work for algebra as well. So Melissa, I would say if you're interested, we should meet and talk about if you think you have enough buy-in on at least one level.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Dayanara, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank
just
you.
Before you go on, just one thing I want to clarify. When we say algebra, that means let's say it's 8th grade algebra, we still want all of 8th grade, the general ed and the algebra. If it's general ed 8th grade, we also want the algebra. We don't want just one course within a grade level. It's by grade level that we're implementing, partly because we don't want a stigma of it's only for the advanced kids or it's only for the non-advanced kids, either way.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dana.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on Melissa's question. So we're a small school district and we have one teacher teaching per grade level, but we also have a second teacher who does the self-contained special ed classes.
Mhm.
Well, then will I be, what, let's say we select eighth grade and I have the buy-in from the general ed teacher, I'll have to get the special ed teacher's buy-in as well. So
Is
that
is the self-contained do you have like a self-contained per grade or do you have a self-contained like for the whole middle school?
we have a self-contained per grade. So technically we'll have two teachers per grade. One teaches all the general ed classes, and then we have one special ed teacher that does that one grade level
Yeah.
of like really.
So as a general rule, we're focused mostly on the general ed, the special, and we're funded to give payment to general ed teachers to attend. We'd love to have the special ed teacher attend our professional development, but we can't pay them to do so.
Stephen,
That
this
make
this is a little bit different. This is the question that we got because the special ed teacher is the teacher of record. So there
okay.
is
So that's it. So are the special ed students taking the state regular ed test? Is the question.
Yes.
and they're not
If
taking
they
the
are,
alternative
then the
assessment.
special ed teacher would by that definition they're a general teacher. Yes, I was thinking of a small pool out where there's 3 or 4
No, it's
kids.
not. They don't push in. They are the teacher of record for
Right.
that small group of students. So
Right,
then
and
we
that
have
students are
two.
still taking the state test, and so
Yes.
then they would be also the teacher of record for students taking. Then they would attend the professional development and be supported and get
Stephen,
all the materials and
I want to
and
put
we can pay them
I'm
to
going to put a
attend.
pin in this one because I and get back to you, Diana, because I think this is the one, Stephen, we were going to the evaluators to see if they have to do it.
Oh, they
Because
That's
have
my
to.
question. Yes,
They
two.
have to do
We're
it. Have
interested
to
in
do it to.
participating, but I didn't know if I have to also include the special education teacher as well, or is it
Okay.
just a general teacher that teaches all of
Okay.
the
Yeah.
classes?
Um. Yeah, this is a technical evaluator, what counts as good data question that I think I need to check with them on that. Um, and
Yep.
make sure that, and maybe Megan, you make sure you get the exact details of what's going on so I can talk to this evaluator and see what the rules are. Sorry about that. I can't
That's
answer
okay.
that.
It's Diana, I'll have I have your email from the registration and we'll follow
Okay,
up.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Any other questions from folks? Okay, so I'm sure you're all incredibly convinced. Oh, wait, sorry, Bart, you have one? Oh, great question. Stephen, do you know if other initiatives are happening like this in the other subject areas?
Not in this way. And what I mean by that is there are groups that support um, how to do it, how to set up. Some of the work that we'll be doing is how to set up a reassessment contract, how to organize your school and make it practical. The PD kind of stuff. You can get PD support. General, there's a group. The one I've liked best is the Stager Center, STAGR. I'll put that in. Actually, they're good at PD support on this. Marzano does it also, but I've actually liked the Stager Center's work better, from what I've seen. But what they don't have is the support materials to make it easy to implement. You're still designing your own support stuff. Now, in English language arts, in many ways, that's not as big a lift because things are math and English are very different and some things are easier and some things are harder in standards-based grading in English versus math. So the idea that I'm going to turn in a paper, get it graded, get it back, revise it, and get full credit on the revision can be very natural in an English class. As the way they do things normally. And so some of that reassessment piece, it looks different. The way to do it is different. There are people who help you doing it. And you may not, I'm not sure if they need the amount of support materials that you need to be able to do it in math, but there's nobody creating them specifically. Similarly, in science, I think you do need a lot of the support materials. And that's project for the future for us after we're done with the math. I hate to say that it's not one that so yes for professional development, no for materials is the way I would describe it.
So I just put in the chat the link to my calendar. The next step, so if you are interested in becoming part of the study, the next step is that you'll schedule a meeting with me. We'll meet, you'll tell me a little bit more about your school or your district, why you're interested in participating. We'll make sure it's a good fit. If it does seem like it's going to be a good fit and you meet all of the baseline requirements, I will then reintroduce you to Stephen and John, who will begin the MOU process. One thing to note is that, so Stephen said we are trying to do the first round of randomization at the end of February. Depending on your district and how cumbersome the MOU and data sharing process can be, I would jump on this earlier rather than later, because what would be a real bummer is if you are perfect for this and you really want to do it, and then the MOU process takes till July and we can't have you be part of the cohort. So I would schedule that time with me sooner rather than later. We probably won't need the full 30 minutes since you just got this whole spiel, but we'll schedule it anyway. The one other thing, because I would be remiss if I didn't share this, Fullscale also just launched a rural AI strategy lab. If you are calling in from a rural area in New York, I just dropped the link. We're putting together a cohort of folks who will be solving real problems in context together through AI-enabled solution, and the application is live and due back February 13th. Yes, Anthony, please.
So the quick question I have is, obviously I kind of bought into this, but I need to get my assistant superintendent in. Is the video that has been recorded going to be available so I could share with him before we look to schedule a meeting with you?
Yep, I will, right after this, I will send a link with the recording, as well as a summary of the program and the link to the website and my scheduling link.
And do you folks know, I should have mentioned this, I'm putting in the chat our mathempowerments.org. It's easier, at least for me to remember. I don't know if it's as easy for everybody else. But this is our website, which has additional information on it, and it was really helpful for folks trying to learn.
All right, everyone. Well, with that, then we'll give you 10 minutes back of your lives, and we hope to speak with you really soon. Take care.
Wonderful. Thank you.